Welcome to the Reschool'd podcast, the show that discusses all the things that schools may have missed, with your hosts AJ Kuti and Jason Gordon. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. We are the Reschool'd podcast, the show that discusses all the things that schools may not have prepared you for. As always, I'm AJ, and sitting across from me, Jason. Jason, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm struggling, AJ. I'm not going to lie.
Struggling? Sounds like something I would say.
Well, see, this week I had the girls all by myself. So I've got two daughters, 9 and almost 7. So they're quite the handful. But this weekend, I had water damage all in the flooring of my studio, and apparently it's been leaking in there for a while. I just now noticed it because the floor is swelling. So I had to tear out flooring, subflooring, re-put all that stuff down. Yeah, it was morning to night for about 2.5 days, and I'm so from getting up and from standing up and sitting down, standing up, sitting down. I'm so sore I can't hardly move.
I imagine.
So, I'm on the struggle bus this morning.
Well, my issues weren't near that, so I was good. And so this episode will be coming out next Monday, but this past weekend, I would be remiss to not bring up the fact that Georgia beat Tennessee. So I had a great weekend. I had a wonderful weekend. I actually
you didn't go to the game, did you?
No, I didn't go to the game. I went to right before, the morning of. I went to the grocery store to get groceries for the week, and I thought, okay, Georgia's playing. We're going to celebrate. So I bought one of those Dutch apple pies, those frozen Dutch apple pies that you put in the oven, and they're so good. And so when I got home, I told my girls, I said, look, if Georgia wins, then we get to eat apple pie and ice cream. If Georgia loses, I'm throwing it in the trash. We're just not having it. I'm throwing it in the trash. And every 5 minutes, the girls would run into the room. It's like, is Georgia winning? Fortunately, they were up the whole time. So I was like, yep, we're winning. I was so excited. So it was fun to be able to play around with that.
That's a good way to create long-term team fans.
Yes. Well,
tie incentives to their winning.
When I said that about the throw it in the trash, my wife was like, over my dead body. So
be like, Daddy's completely joking, because that's not happening.
Exactly. That's exactly what it went like. Well, last week we talked about this feeling of being overwhelmed, and it was a tips and tricks episode. We're going to do another tips and tricks episode. We're going to take a pivot. This time we're going to be talking about something that's a little bit more current because of what I say academic season we're in, and that's registration, scheduling classes. So we're going to be talking about tips and tricks when it comes to scheduling your courses for the semester or for your college career. And so what does that sound like to you? Does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. Before we do, remind everybody, please visit us on the website, reschool'd.com. That's with a D, not an ED. Check us out on the social media handles. And of course, your favorite podcasting app. Give us all the stars. Tell other people about us, all that jazz. But most importantly, give us some content to talk to you about. Send us a message either through social media or on our website, either one, so we can, talk about the things you want to hear about.
Yeah, past couple episodes, we've had listener requests that turned into full episodes, so we love those.
Yeah, that was nice. Didn't have to think about anything, just answer questions.
Yeah, it was great. Quick question. When you were in college, were you a plan ahead scheduler, or were you more of schedule as they come?
Oh, yeah. I was, I changed majors really a couple of times during. The second time I changed majors, it wasn't that big of a deal. But the first time, it was a complete overhaul of my schedule. So things got wrecked completely in terms of what I should be taking and things like that. But yeah, I basically had my entire college 4 years planned out, the courses I was going to take and all kinds of stuff very early on, because I wanted to know exactly how much pain I was going to be in for.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah, and I wanted to balance every semester, making certain I wasn't so overloaded with courses, the hard courses in one semester. So yeah, I was a big planner. What about you? Were you something tells me you were not a huge planner in that regard.
And it's interesting. You said you were talking about your major change, the change in majors. I had a change in majors. I went into college pre-med, and in most colleges, pre-med is pretty much structured for you. So here's the classes that you take throughout your career to get you through pre-med, with obviously flexibility. And in that flexibility, much like you, I tried to make it where I had this good mix of these are the hard classes, but here's the easy classes that I'm going to be able to offset some of that with. And then I switched and went over to accounting. And in that, it wasn't as structured. I mean, they just pretty much said, okay, here's your course curriculum to get your degree. And you can kind of go about it. I mean, and granted, we had advisors and stuff like that, but you have a lot of flexibility. You had a lot of autonomy when it comes to that when you're going through like a business versus a prereq structure or pre-med structure. And that during that time when I switched, I was not the plan ahead type person. I was not the one that was like, okay, here's my next 4 semesters of what my courses are going to be. It was more of like, okay, here's what I have, here's what I need, and here's what's being offered. I'm going to try to throw some strategy in there to make it a little bit easier for me in some areas. But the most I planned ahead for my semesters, and actually this is one of my tips that I'm going to bring up too, but the most I planned ahead was for summers. That was it. I looked ahead for summers just because if I could take them certain classes, then I wouldn't take them during the spring or the fall. So that was pretty much it. Now, as being an advisor now for students and seeing kind of the errors of my ways and what I really push hard in saying, okay, you need to come up with a plan in some way. You don't have to say these are the exact classes, but you need to have an idea of what needs to be taken at what times so that you're not going to have that issue at the tail end where you can't take a class because you don't have the prereq. So I'm a big proponent of that now. I wish somebody would have told me that when I was, an undergrad.
That makes sense. I had a couple of incidences, and I'm not saying I would have been that big of a planner every single semester, but once I figured out what I knew things I wanted to do, right? So I was able to study abroad actually twice during college. And that's a lot more than most, but that's very difficult to manage with your schedule. You have to make certain you've got the prerequisites, like you said, but you have to make certain it leaves time for other classes and how that's going to fit. And I was in the honors college, which they have a very, very rigid curriculum about the core classes, when you take them and how you take them, right? And one of them was a 6-hour class that you have to take for a year straight. And there was no way to do that and to study abroad. And I said, well, I'm going to put it off. I went to advising and stuff. And they were like, okay, so you can put that off, but you're going to have to take it the next year and it's going to have to come in this order. Well, when I got back from studying abroad, I was so captivated. I was like, well, I'm not doing that either. Right. And so I had to, it was a huge undertaking to make certain I could arrange to do what I wanted to do and still graduate from college on time. I mean, and it came down to the last semester. I mean, I had to do an extra half semester course just to graduate on time because I didn't get all my prerequisites out of the way when I was supposed to and things like that. So anyway, that's the reason I was like that. And I think a lot of people have stories like that where it comes up, right? I had another story where basically I signed up for 2 courses that I didn't realize ran in parallel to each other. So you couldn't get academic credit for both of them.
Oh, wow.
So
yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, so I had to drop the course midway through the semester and sign up for a different. Luckily, our school had half semester courses and sign up for another half semester course just to, complete the semester. And both of those times, a half semester course is really intense.
Yeah.
Right? You have to go, you have to double your schedule for half the semester. So it was something, but I got out and it worked.
Yeah, I think most of my issues in undergrad was, had I planned, like looking back, had I planned, I don't know how much of my plan would have actually been useful because so many things came up that I wasn't anticipating. Like when I went into college, there was playing soccer for a college team was never on my radar. We didn't, as a matter of fact, the college that I went to didn't even have a soccer team, a men's soccer team or a women's soccer team. They got it in my second year, I believe, or third year, going into my third year of college. And I just so happened to know the coach from somewhere. I can't remember. And he came to me and said, "Hey, do you want to try out?" And I tried out and made it. So that really put a strain on my semesters where we were in season. And there was no way, had I planned it there, that I could have done anything with that, not knowing that I was going to be playing soccer. Because we had practice every day, we were traveling and everything like that. So you had to really be careful in those situations too. So, well, let's get into the tips and tricks. Let's start going through ours. You want to start it?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, we want to make sure you don't make some of the same mistakes we did.
Yes.
And that's where I want to start it. How do you avoid making mistakes with regard to planning your curriculum of study, the courses you're going to take each semester, when you're going to register, things like that? So first off, talk to your advisor ahead of time.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Most schools have professional advisors that's all they do. They understand schedules, they understand the course offerings, they can help you look things up. They have a lot of expertise in that field. If you don't have a dedicated professional advisor, lots of times you have a mentor that serves that role, and that's oftentimes a professor in your discipline of study. And they tend to know the course of study extremely well. Now, they probably don't have the insight into what classes are being offered what semester and things like that, the same way a professional advisor would. So anyway, figure out what you have as a resource, and it's going to be one of the two, because I believe every college has one or the other, a professor who's assigned to you and a professional advisor. Set a meeting with them, talk to them, do the research ahead of time, and go in when you have that meeting, have ideas of what you want to take. Don't just go in there and say, "Hey, I'm this type of major. What should I take next semester?" Because once again, then you're asking them to be creative for you. You should do the research, go in there and get their assistance in planning out things once you've done the research yourself. Because again, they have no idea what your preferences are. They have no idea what your life looks like. If you can go ahead and put your head around some of that stuff and go in there with a framework in mind, it's going to be a lot better meeting. And so there you go. That's my tip number one. What about you, AJ?
Well, before I get into my first one, I wanted to piggyback on something like that, because you brought up a good point that kind of stuck with me. As we were both mentors and advisees for students, I would say when you're talking to your advisor, try to create a good relationship with them. Because if you have a good relationship with them, they're going to try harder to make sure that you succeed. Like if you don't care, then it's harder for them to really care if you don't show that you care. But if you're cordial, you stay in communications with them, you have a good relationship with them, they're likely to be able to help you even more. Like they'll for the most part bend over backwards just to make sure that you are achieving whatever goals that you're wanting to achieve. Part of that communication is being able to tell them what your goals are.
Yeah, I think a lot of students don't realize that about professors. We really do get vested in your career the same way that you do. I mean, we start thinking about what's best for you. We start planning ahead. We try to give you advice and things like that, just because we can remember when we were in that situation, and we hope we can instill some knowledge or impart some wisdom that will help you in a way. So, yeah, I mean, establish that relationship. And again, it's going to help the professor or mentor do better by you. Okay. So, yeah, good idea.
All right. So my first one is what this whole episode is about. And that is planning ahead. My first advice is to plan ahead. I didn't do that. And it came with some downfalls. And when I say plan ahead, I'm not saying, okay, I'm going to take these 5 classes this semester, these 4 or 5 classes. I'm just saying have a plan. Have something in place where you say, okay, if this is how everything is going and everything's going well, then these are the areas of classes that I'm going to be looking at to take this semester. And these are the ones that I have to take this semester. And that's kind of gets me to the second part to this tip is as you're planning ahead, you need to understand prereqs. Prereqs are the thing that really trip up a lot of students, especially in the tail end of their college career as they're coming up on graduation, because prereqs are the classes that hold you back from being able to take a upper level class. And if you understand those and how they work, what's needed, all that kind of stuff, then you can go ahead and prepare in a way that is not going to, perhaps one of the things for my school now is we have a class that has quite a few prereqs because it is the final capstone class. And if you don't pay attention to that and strategize, then you could be taking that one class the last semester and you're wasting a full semester on one single class and that's it. So there is this gamesmanship of being able to say, okay, well, if I take these and these and these, then it's going to leave me with this, which is the final class that I have to take. Plus I have the ability to take this, this, and this, which gives me a full-time load for my last semester and I'm not wasting it. And so prereqs are huge.
Yeah. Just in furtherance of that, I can't tell you how many students I've advised over the years who have not done that. They have fallen behind on the prerequisites, which meant they had to push other courses off in the semester. And it meant in some semesters they could only take a few of the classes that they needed. And they were ultimately at the end, all of the honestly more difficult classes, the higher level classes came at the same time, and it made for really painful semesters. It made some of them made lower grades because of it. They had to take courses during the summer that they otherwise didn't want to take. And, that's a lot of extra money to have to pay for. And I can't tell you how many students had to go for a whole nother semester or a whole nother year to complete out the course schedule just because they didn't do the planning ahead of time. So I've seen that over and over, and that is an excellent tip. So,
yeah. And let me add to this too. I wanted to add one more thing to that. And that is, typically colleges give you this curriculum sheet of all the classes that you have to take, and it's usually divided up into areas of some way. So you have all your core classes, then you have all your major classes, and probably some other basic classes, electives, and all that kind of stuff. I know in our situation, so some schools may have it differently. I'm not a big fan of the way our schools or my schools now is set up, because it gives the impression that you should be following it from top to bottom in that order. And you never want to do that. You want to, again, plan ahead to figure out what's the most optimal order for you. You were talking about having students at the tail end where they can only take so many classes because they were lacking prereqs. I've seen the same thing in the middle of a college career where they're like, okay, I want to get into this, but I'm like, you don't have the prereq. And where you're thinking about taking 5, you can literally only take 3. Because that's all this offer that you have the prereqs that meet the prereqs. So it really, again, it pushes you back. So yeah, it's a tough thing. What's your number 2?
So this one's I'm thinking about. I've got 2 more tips, but I think this is the best one to say at this time. Career plan. We've talked before in other episodes about career and life plan and what you hope to accomplish and all that stuff. Well, this 4 to 5 or 3 to 5, depending. Yeah, right. It could be longer, right? I don't want to make any assumptions. But this few-year experience is an important part of your career. So if there are things you want to accomplish in your career, you have aspirations, make certain you're taking the courses that are going to allow for that. You said, you mentioned earlier that you were pre-med early on, right? Which means you intend to go to some form of medical school. Lots of people assume that you have to be a biology major or a chemistry major to do that. Well, that's just not the case. I mean, you have to have all of the courses that are necessary to gain entrance to medical school. You may have a certain number of courses that you need to be prepared for an entrance exam, like the MCAT, which is a medical school acceptance test. Well, plan for that, okay? I mean, make certain that the courses that you intend to take are related to your overall career objectives. So even if you're not a biology major, but you realize that you're going to need a couple of classes, make certain that you take those classes. And yeah, they'll have to come in the form of elective or at least classes that you have the option to take as part of your major. Make certain you're connecting those with what you ultimately want to accomplish. Sometimes you'll major in something because you're passionate about it, but you have other career plans. You you want to study fashion, but you want to also go into fashion writing. Well, you need to take courses as well, not just on fashion, but on professional writing, right? That type of thing. So make certain you're taking the courses that are going to give you not only the skill set, but the exposure, the general well rounded knowledge, and potentially the connections, right? That's particularly important for things like internships, when an internship is part of your curriculum, or particularly in like engineering fields where you have these cooperative programs where you'll work for an entire semester in industry before before you graduate. You at least do 1 or 2 semesters like that. So make certain these courses and whatever extracurricular stuff like for teaching, student teaching, or for engineering cooperatives, or mandatory internships, things like that, and even optional things like study abroads, right? Make certain all of that fits long term with you getting out of college with the requisites for, to pursue your career path or field, to get that job, or to undertake whatever, type of career progression you're going to undertake. So, yeah, that's my second tip.
So with that tip, do you think that it becomes more magnified when it comes to your electives as well?
I do.
Okay.
It's so funny. So many majors have so few electives.
Yeah, I know. That's one issue.
And the question becomes, do you take the course or not, right? Because it might extend another semester, or it might extend another year. So, I can't answer that question for everybody. You just have to understand the repercussions behind either one. Certainly, do what it takes to graduate. But, like I say, if things are going to require additional time, additional effort, they're not required, they don't fit within your potential elective pool, again, that's where you got to go back and talk to your advisor and get some very specific information about your situation.
Yeah, I actually have one example of that is at our school for accountants. Obviously, this is kind of where I'm more familiar with. We have in all business majors concentrations at our school, or my school. I keep saying our school. It's just natural. But we have one general elective, which is any class 2000 level or higher, that the college itself, like not the schools, but the college general that's being offered. And I have a lot of accounting students come in and say, well, what can I use for that? And I tell them literally anything that's 2000 or higher. However, if your career plan is to be a CPA, you have to have at least 30 hours of upper level accounting classes taken. At our university, or at our college, you don't get 30. So you could, it's not advised, but you could use that general elective as another accounting class to get 3 more credit hours towards that CPA. Now we have to go through a form to get it switched because it's supposed to be, outside, but that is an option. But again, that goes directly with their career plan. So that's a good tip. My second one.
You got another one?
Yeah, my second one. And this is, again, this kind of comes from the strategy side of me. When you're planning ahead, you want to plan it to where you mix some easy classes with some hard classes. You want to have it to where you don't have, if you're taking 5 classes a semester, you want to try your best not to have 5 hard classes. Or you don't want to make it early in your college career to make it where you have 5 easy A classes in a semester. You want to be able to mix those around because some classes are going to be more labor intensive. Some classes are going to be easier, especially depending on what you're like. Maybe math is easier for you, so you're not going to have to take as much time versus another class. So you want to have that mix. I would also say too, when you're dealing with that, you also want to pay attention to scholarships as well. I think I brought this up on another episode. In Georgia, we have the Hope Scholarship, and they're tracked. They check. So you have to maintain a 3.0 average throughout college in order to maintain your Hope Scholarship. And they check it at least when I was in college. So it may have changed. I'm not sure. But when I was in college, it changed to, they would check it at the 30, the 60, the 90 hours. to check. So knowing that, we would take some hard classes that would get us to 28 hours, knowing they wouldn't check our GPA at that moment. And then the next semester, which would get us to, 40 something hour classes, because we would take 15 hours. We would take easier classes. We would include easier classes in theirs to bump up our GPA. So they're not actually checking it at 30, they're checking it at 40. So we had more classes to input into that number to maybe raise it up if necessary. So you need to pay attention to your scholarship requirements. And then also, like I said, you don't want to give yourself an incredibly hard semester because you'll get burnt out. And you don't want to waste an entire semester on easy A's where you can't put those other places. And that, again, goes back to prereq. Like there are classes at college where like you look at them and go, well, it's so early in my college career. Like these are ones that's really high up in the core classes, like really early, like some kind of IT class. And there's no prereq after it. Like it's not a prereq to another class, but yet a lot of times they take it so early because it is so early in their curriculum sheet. I'm like, just wait on it, because it could be one of those classes that you can take towards the end that's going to make that last semester where it's grueling for most people. You may be able to use that as a easy class to offset those hard classes. So that would be my next one, is strategize some easy mixed in with some harder.
Yeah, that's great advice. And you do not want to fail, and you do not want to have a semester in your core where you make bad grades.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Because, I would say employers, if they ever do look at your grades, they care more about what you have going on in your core, in your concentration, in your major, than they do outside. And certainly the same goes for graduate schools, right? So once again, don't want that.
Yep.
All right, my last tip, okay? And this seems to fly in the face of what I said last time, link it to your career plan. You also need to take courses that matter to you in life, right? Yep. So say you just want to take something, you don't want to miss that opportunity, right? That was the way it was for me in studying abroad. I did not want to miss that opportunity. For you, it may be any number of classes. If you don't want to graduate college without having taken a drawing class or painting class or music class or something that is completely collateral to, right? Completely outside of your intended career track, your major, anything like that, but it's just something that personally fulfills you. Don't waste that opportunity. Plan that in as well, right? Identify the semester in which it works, balance it out with those other classes that you have to take, and make certain you get to take that class. For me, I was really into languages. So there were a couple semesters where I knew I just wanted an introduction to a couple of classes. And so I took a couple of language classes that were, outside of my concert. I was a language major, right? But I took a couple of other language classes, just entry-level classes, just so I would know the structure of things and how it works. And that made a huge difference for me. I was really glad I did it. And it took a lot of work to fit them in, right? They had to, I was luckily I was able to make them count as electives, right? But that may not be the case. It may be that you take a course that really does not move you towards graduation. But again, there is some personal fulfillment and life benefit to it. So, yeah.
It's interesting you say that too, because I was in that position. I've said this before on another episode. I was part of a university team when I was in undergrad. And part of that university team was a course. It was actually 2 semesters of course. So you actually got 2 credit for 2 semesters, 3-hour courses for your elective. And it didn't work for me. Like I'd already filled my electives, but I wasn't going to give up the opportunity to be a part of that team. I mean, there were so many benefits that I was able to get from that team, whether it's just, personal benefits like being able to travel, the connections that I made from a career standpoint. So it was one of those ones where you see it at the bottom of your degree where it says hours not used. I had those, but it was so worth it. So for my third tip, my final tip, I would say utilize the benefits, or maybe a better word would be understand the benefits that come from taking certain courses over the summer. Now in order for this one to be useful in your situation, you do have to have some, I would almost say, some kind of insider information. So this actually brings it back to your advisor, being, close to your advisor, having a good relationship, because they want to help you out. But there are times when certain classes are offered in the summer. Now, we all know summer classes are very condensed. They're very quick. But there are also times where a lot of professors don't work during the summer. Like, they choose not to work. And so they may have to bring in an adjunct. And the reason I brought this up is because it was my situation when I was an undergrad. There was a class that everybody was just afraid to take because it was just notorious that the professor was very hard. And you were going to be putting in a lot of work. But it was also, to some, known, you can catch on, that professor doesn't work in the summer. That class is offered, and it's offered by an adjunct. And so, knowing that, I said, okay, I'm just going to wait and take that class in the summer. And that was a breeze of a class. Now, granted, I learned stuff, and it was condensed, but compared to what it was being said to, by other students about how hard that class was, I came out of that class with an A, no issue. Because I strategized to say, I'm going to try to avoid a certain professor, take it in the summer. And it just so happened too that was the only, like, that class, it was one of the upper level classes, and he was the only professor that taught that class during the regular semesters, and the adjunct will come in. So it worked very well for me. So I would say, utilize those benefits.
I have gotten caught with a couple of professors I did not want to take before. So I know the feeling well. You suffer through it, but you really wish you would plan better ahead of time.
Yeah. I remember in undergrad, there were like 4 professors that everybody just dreaded. And I got through my college career only taking, I believe I took 2 of them. And one of them, usually you had to take more than once. I was able to only take them once. So I managed to get through that fairly unscathed. Now, I will say, I bring this up to my wife, who also went to undergrad with me. She took all 4 of them. I was like, you didn't know? And she's like, no, nobody told me. I was like, it sucks.
I was about to say, either she's a glutton for punishment or she just didn't know.
It didn't matter to her. She still had A's. She was a hard worker. So, but those are our tips and tricks. I think those are really, really good tips and tricks. Like, I think those are things that are very important for students, especially, like I said, right now with this, the registration season being upon us, getting ready for the spring semester. These are vital things that students really need to pay attention to. And it doesn't matter what area of your college career you're in, if you're early or late. If you're early, some of these are even more important, like, the establishing the relationship with your advisor. Those kind of things. So, you got any parting words before we head out?
Well, hopefully this will get you guys off to a great semester, get you planning ahead. Just remind everybody, go to the website, send us a message, view our most recent content, check us out on social media profiles, and, of course, your favorite podcasting app. Share it with others, give us all the stars, and we'll see you guys next time.
Awesome. Well, we hope you enjoyed the episode. We hope to see you next time. Until then, goodbye.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Reschool'd podcast. Be sure to head over to reschool'd.com for news and other information on things we're getting into.